The entire executive floor was decorated with blue and silver balloons. Our company colors, right? The conference room had this massive cake with 500% growth written in blue icing. Everyone was clapping, smiling, looking at me. I mean, they were literally giving me a standing ovation as I walked in. 500% growth in 18 months during a recession. I remember standing there thinking, this is it. This is the moment when all those midnight strategy sessions and canceled vacations finally mean something. My boss, Luther, our CEO, puts his arm around me, squeezes my shoulder. He's beaming, this proud father smile I'd been chasing for 3 years. Absolutely outstanding work, he says. Let's hear it again for the growth our marketing department has achieved. More applause. Someone whistles. My entire team is looking at me with this mixture of respect and, I don't know, validation, like they'd backed the right horse. Luther raises his hand for quiet. Today marks a turning point for our company. He's using his announcement voice now, the one that usually precedes quarterly bonuses or organizational changes. With this incredible momentum, we need fresh, forward-thinking leadership to take us to the next level. I'm nodding along, thinking he's building up to my promotion, the VP position they'd dangled in front of me for 18 months. Then the conference room door opens, and in walks this kid, literally a kid, 20-something, expensive haircut, designer suit that's just slightly too big for him. Luther's smile gets even wider. I'd like to introduce everyone to Drew, my son. He'll be taking over as our new vice president of marketing, effective immediately. The silence in that room, I can still feel it. It was like all the oxygen just disappeared. Drew walks directly to me, hand extended. I've heard so much about you, he says. Dad says you've built an amazing foundation for me to work with. Foundation. Like I was the fucking concrete they poured so this Nepo baby could build his corner office on top. I remember shaking his hand, smiling, congratulating him. Meanwhile, the emails I'd sent that morning to our 5 biggest clients were already sitting in their inboxes. Lunch meetings already scheduled for the following week. Hey, I'm Naomi Reed, 34. And if you're wondering whether I'm the villain or the hero in this story, honestly, I've stopped caring about the difference. Before I get into what happened next, could you hit that like button and subscribe? Because this gets messy, and I promise it's a ride worth taking. Leave a comment if you've ever had your work stolen by someone who's never had to earn anything. I read every single one. So back to that conference room. Everyone's eating cake, awkwardly congratulating this kid who's never managed so much as a lemonade stand, while I'm standing there with my career bleeding out on the floor. 3 years at this company, 12-hour days, working through pneumonia last winter because we couldn't miss our targets. When people started clearing out, Luther pulls me aside. Naomi, I need you to help Drew transition. Show him the ropes, introduce him to the clients, you know. I'm nodding, but inside I'm thinking about the fact that I'd just been demoted without actually changing my title. I'd be doing the VP job while Junior gets all the credit. Of course, I say. Happy to help Drew succeed. Luther squeezes my shoulder again. You're a team player, Naomi. That's what I've always appreciated about you. Team player. The corporate euphemism for a woman who doesn't complain when we screw her over. I go back to my office, close the door, and just sit there. Not crying, not screaming, just eerily calm, because something inside me had finally snapped clean off. You know that feeling when disappointment is so complete that it wraps around and becomes clarity? That's where I was. Crystal clear clarity. My phone buzzes. It's a text from my friend Layla in accounting. WTF just happened? Call me ASAP. I don't call her. Instead, I open my laptop and pull up the dossier I'd been compiling for 6 months. See, I wasn't stupid. I'd seen the writing on the wall when Luther started bringing Drew to quarterly meetings. When he'd interrupt my presentations with fresh perspectives from his son who'd never worked a day in this industry. The dossier had everything: client relationships, campaign strategies, but most importantly, it had the truth about our biggest client, Westbrook Industries. They represented 40% of our revenue, and Luther had been falsifying performance metrics to keep them on board. I'd discovered it by accident 3 months earlier, And instead of reporting it, I documented everything. Insurance policy, I'd told myself. Drew knocks on my office door at 4:30 that afternoon. Hey, got a minute? Dad thought we should start the transition today. He sits across from me, one leg crossed over the other, examining his manicured fingernails. So, what should I know first? I smile. Warm, professional. Well, let's start with our client roster. Why don't we go through them one by one? For the next hour, I give him exactly what he's expecting. Surface-level overviews. Nothing he couldn't get from reading our quarterly reports. He takes a few notes, mostly nods, and checks his phone at least 12 times. Great, this is super helpful, he finally says, standing. Dad's taking me to dinner with the Westbrook team next week. Maybe you could prep me before that? Actually, I say, I've already scheduled a lunch with Marcus Westbrook tomorrow. Routine check-in. Why don't you join us? Drew looks briefly panicked. Tomorrow, I have a golf thing with your fraternity brothers? I finish for him. No problem. I'll reschedule for next week so you can join. Relief washes over his face. That would be great, thanks. After he leaves, I send a text to Marcus Westbrook. Looking forward to our lunch tomorrow. I have some important information to discuss. That night I didn't sleep. I sat on my balcony, 15 floors up, watching the city lights and thinking about loyalty, about value, about what happens when you pour everything into a company that sees you as disposable. My sister calls around midnight. Mom said you sounded weird on the phone. Everything okay? I tell her about the promotion, about Drew, about standing there eating cake that was celebrating my accomplishment while simultaneously marking my irrelevance. Quit, she says immediately. With your track record, you could walk into any marketing firm in the city. It's not that simple, I tell her. Why not? Why not indeed? Was it pride? The 3 years I'd invested? The unfinished business? I'm not done there yet, is all I say. The next morning, I dress carefully. Dark blue suit, minimal jewelry, hair pulled back, professional, forgettable, the kind of woman who gets passed over for promotions. Marcus Westbrook is already at the restaurant when I arrive. 50-something, old money, the kind of man who refers to women in business as gals without irony. His company had been with our firm for a decade. Naomi, he says, standing to greet me. Always a pleasure. Luther tells me you've been doing exceptional work. I smile. That's actually what I wanted to discuss. For the next 20 minutes, I walk him through his company's actual performance metrics versus what we'd been reporting. I show him documentation, email trails. The discrepancies are significant enough that if Westbrook had been making decisions based on our falsified data, it could constitute fraud. Marcus's face gets progressively redder. Are you telling me Luther has been lying to me for 3 years? Not 3 years, I correct him. The falsification began 18 months ago, when I took over the department and started implementing changes that would actually generate real growth. Why are you showing me this? He demands. You realize this could terminate our contract. I take a sip of water, calm, measured. I'm starting my own firm, smaller, more focused, with complete transparency. I'd like Westbrook to be my first client. He stares at me. You're blackmailing me? I'm offering you a choice. Stay with a company that's been deceiving you, or move to one founded on honesty. I'm not asking for an answer today. Think about it. I slide my new business card across the table. It's simple, elegant, Read Strategy Group in silver lettering. I'd had them printed 2 months ago. One more thing, I add. I've accepted a lunch invitation with Luther and his son next week. I haven't mentioned any of this to them. What exactly are you playing at? Marcus asks, pocketing my card. I'm not playing, I reply. That's the difference between me and Luther. Over the next 5 days, I met with our other 4 major clients. Each meeting followed the same pattern. Documentation of discrepancies. My new business card. No pressure for an immediate decision. Drew shadowed me around the office, asking basic questions about marketing strategies I'd implemented years ago. I answered everything thoroughly, professionally. I introduced him to the team, explained workflows, walked him through our analytics platforms. You're being really cool about all this, he says on Friday afternoon. Dad thought you might be difficult. Why would I be difficult? It's just business, right? He nods, relieved. Exactly. Just business. The following Tuesday is the lunch with Westbrook. Luther, Drew, Marcus, and me. We meet at Delano's, this overpriced steakhouse where Luther always entertains important clients. Luther orders expensive wine, talks about golf, introduces Drew as the fresh blood our company needs. Marcus is polite but reserved. He glances at me occasionally, but I keep my expression neutral. So, Luther says eventually, Drew will be taking over the Westbrook account personally. We want to give you our top-tier attention. Marcus dabs his mouth with his napkin. Actually, Luther, I've been meaning to discuss our contract. Luther's smile doesn't falter, but his eyes sharpen. Of course, we're always open to adjustments. It's not an adjustment. We're terminating. The silence that follows is even more profound than the one in that balloon-filled conference room. Luther's smile freezes in place. Terminating? Marcus, we've been partners for a decade. If there's an issue— The issue, Marcus interrupts, is integrity. Or rather, your lack of it. Luther's eyes flick to me, then back to Marcus. I don't understand. Naomi has shown me the actual performance metrics for our campaigns, compared to what you've been reporting to us. Drew looks confused. What's he talking about, Dad? Luther's face has gone pale. Marcus, whatever you think you've seen, I'm sure there's a simple explanation. Save it, Marcus says, standing. We've already signed with Reed Strategy Group, effective immediately. He nods at me, drops his napkin on the table, and walks out. The look Luther gives me, if hatred could burn, I'd be ash on that restaurant floor. What did you do? He whispers. I take a sip of the expensive wine he ordered. Nothing you wouldn't have done. It's just business, right? I wish I could tell you that was the end of it. That one client was enough to make my point. But revenge is like those fancy multi-course meals. Once you've had a taste, you want to experience the full menu. Before Luther could even process what happened with Westbrook, the other 4 clients called, all terminating, all signing with Reed Strategy Group. So here's where I need you to decide if you're with me for the rest of this story, because it gets darker. If you're still here, hit that like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me if you think I went too far or not far enough. So, after that lunch where Westbrook publicly fired Luther's firm, the restaurant staff practically had to peel him off the ceiling. His face went through this fascinating color transformation, white to red to this disturbing shade of purple I'd never seen on a human being before. You ungrateful bitch, he hissed across the table. After everything I've done for you. Drew just sat there, mouth slightly open, looking between us like he was watching a tennis match he never bought tickets for. I placed my napkin on the table and stood up. Thank you for the opportunity, Luther. And Drew, I turned to him with my most professional smile. Best of luck with your new position. I'm sure you'll grow into it. As I walked out, I could hear Luther already on his phone, voice tight with panic, probably calling his lawyers. But here's the beautiful thing about documentation. I had copies of everything. Every falsified report. Every email where Luther directed me to adjust numbers. Every single receipt. By the time I reached my car, my phone was blowing up. First Layla from accounting, what did you do? Then my team members, one after another. Then the COO. I turned my phone off and drove straight to my new office space, a modest suite I'd leased 2 weeks earlier. The next morning, the company's stock had dropped 12%. Losing 5 major clients representing over 70% of your revenue will do that. Luther called me 17 times. I let every call go to voicemail. On the 18th call, I picked up. You have exactly 30 seconds, I said. Name your price, he growled. Whatever you want. Come back, bring the clients, and I'll make you executive vice president. I actually laughed. That's your offer? A better title at a company that's currently in free fall? What do you want, Naomi? Money? Take it. A board seat? It's yours. I wanted recognition for my work, I told him. I wanted what I earned. But you couldn't stand the idea that a woman built something valuable in your company, could you? So you handed it to your son who couldn't tell a marketing strategy from a grocery list. This isn't about Drew. It's exactly about Drew and your ego, and the fact that you think loyalty only flows upward. I'll sue you for client theft, he threatened, for corporate espionage. Go ahead, I said calmly, and I'll submit all my evidence of fraud to the SEC. See who comes out worse. After a long silence, he asked, Is that what this is? Blackmail? No, Luther. This is consequences. I hung up and blocked his number. Over the next month, my new company grew faster than I'd anticipated. Not just with the 5 clients I'd taken, but with 3 more who'd heard through industry channels about what happened. Turns out, Luther had been playing the same games with multiple clients. My former team members started reaching out one by one. First Amara, my brilliant analytics manager, then Kai, our creative director. Within 6 weeks, I'd hired 7 people from my old department. They brought with them their expertise, their client relationships, and most importantly, their loyalty. The messages from Luther came through other channels now. Mutual connections, industry events, always the same theme. He was willing to settle, to make peace. I ignored them all. Then one evening, after everyone had left the office, there was a knock on my door. It was Drew. He looked different, thinner. The expensive suit now properly tailored but somehow less shiny. The swagger replaced with something approaching humility. Can we talk? He asked. I gestured to the chair across from my desk. 5 minutes. He sat down, rubbing his palms on his knees. The company's filing for Chapter 11 next week. I nodded. This wasn't news to me. I still had friends in their finance department. Dad's being investigated by the SEC, he continued, and 3 other clients have filed lawsuits. That sounds like a Luther problem, I said. Drew looked up, meeting my eyes directly for perhaps the first time. I didn't know. About the falsified reports. I swear. Would it have mattered if you did? He thought about this, then shook his head slowly. Probably not. Not then. At least he was honest. I'm not here to ask for your help, he said, or forgiveness. I wanted you to know that I see it now. What he did to you. What I was part of. I studied him for a moment. Why are you really here, Drew? He reached into his jacket and pulled out a flash drive. This has everything. Dad's offshore accounts, the shell companies, the client lists he's been hiding from the board. He's been siphoning money for years. I didn't reach for it. Why give this to me? Because you're the only one who wasn't afraid to stand up to him. His voice cracked slightly. And because I've spent my entire life watching him crush people who got in his way, including my mom. This was new information. Luther's ex-wife had vanished from the company narrative years ago. He drove her to a breakdown, Drew continued, then used it to get full custody of me and control of her shares in the company. He's not a good person. And I don't want to be him anymore. I finally took the flash drive. What do you expect me to do with this? Whatever you think is right. He stood up. That's all I wanted to say. After he left, I sat there turning the flash drive over in my hands. I should have felt triumph, vindication. Instead, I felt tired. The kind of bone-deep exhaustion that comes after months of channeling rage into action. I plugged in the flash drive. Drew hadn't exaggerated. Luther had been stealing from his own company for over a decade. Millions siphoned through elaborate financial schemes. Client contracts with hidden clauses. Evidence of tax fraud that would make an IRS agent salivate. What happened next is where people usually divide on whether I'm the villain or the hero in this story. I didn't go to the SEC. I didn't call the police. Instead, I called Elliot Westmore, the business reporter who'd been covering Luther's company's decline. I have a story for you, I said, but I need certain assurances. The next morning, his exposé hit. It detailed every aspect of Luther's fraud except the parts involving his son. The article mentioned an anonymous insider who provided documentation. By noon, Luther's company had halted trading. By evening, he was being led out of his office building by federal agents, cameras flashing in his face. I watched it all unfold on the news, sitting in my living room with a glass of wine. No cheering, no celebration, just closure. 3 days later, Drew showed up at my office again. Thank you, he said simply, for leaving me out of it. I nodded. What will you do now? He shrugged. Start over, somewhere new, maybe actually learn the business from the ground up. Good luck with that. He turned to leave, then paused. He always said you were the smartest person in the company, even before everything. He was afraid of you, I think. He should have been afraid of underestimating me, I replied. After Drew left, Amara came into my office. Was that who I think it was? Yes. And? I looked out my window at the city skyline. And nothing. It's over. But it wasn't quite over. The industry fallout continued for months. Luther's trial became a cautionary tale in business ethics courses. His company was acquired for pennies on the dollar by a competitor. Former employees scattered to various firms, many landing at mine. 6 months after I started Reed's strategy group, we moved to a larger office. A year later, we were handling accounts twice the size of my former clients. I hired 30 people, then 50. On the second anniversary of that balloon-filled conference room humiliation, I received a letter. No return address. Inside was a news clipping about Luther's sentencing 15 years for fraud, embezzlement, and tax evasion. Scrawled at the bottom in handwriting I didn't recognize. The house of cards always falls eventually. I never found out if it was from Drew or someone else. It didn't matter. Last month, Reed's strategy group was acquired by one of the largest marketing conglomerates in the country. The terms included full autonomy for me and my team, and a board seat for yours truly. The press release cited our unprecedented growth and industry-leading client retention. The irony isn't lost on me. I built something from the ashes of betrayal that ended up more valuable than what was taken from me. So that's my story. Not a clean, neat revenge fantasy where I walked away into the sunset after destroying my enemy. The reality was messier, more complicated. It cost me friendships, sleep, and probably a few years off my life from stress. Was it worth it? I still ask myself that question. Luther lost everything. His company, his freedom, his reputation. His son lost his inheritance and his name. I gained a successful company and industry respect. But the woman who stood in that conference room eating celebration cake while being publicly replaced, she's gone. In her place is someone harder, sharper, less willing to trust. If there's a lesson here, maybe it's this. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't what you do to others, but what you build from what they tried to take from you. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe. I'd love to know in the comments whether you think I went too far, not far enough, or if you've ever had to rebuild after someone tried to destroy what you created. Your stories matter to me because they remind me that mine isn't unique. We're all fighting battles others can't see. Thank you for listening. This is Naomi Reed, reminding you that the best revenge isn't served cold, it's served successful. The bottle of whiskey sat on my desk, amber liquid catching the morning light. An unexpected gift from Jace, the newest member of my team. The handwritten note simply read, "Happy birthday, Kinsley. Enjoy this special reserve." I hadn't even remembered telling him it was my birthday. The gesture seemed oddly personal from someone who'd only been with the company for 8 months. Pleasant, but unnecessary. I already had plans that evening. Dinner with friends, too many cocktails, and honestly, I wasn't much of a whiskey drinker. When Rowan, our CEO, stopped by my office that afternoon to discuss quarterly projections, his eyes immediately landed on the bottle. Well now, what have we here? He picked it up, examining the label with unexpected interest. This is extraordinary. Where did you get this? I shrugged. Birthday gift from Jace. Do you know much about whiskey? Rowan's eyes widened. Kinsley, this is Dalmore Constellation 1964. There are maybe a dozen bottles in existence. His fingers traced the bottle reverently. I've been trying to find one of these for years. An idea struck me. Take it, I said impulsively. Consider it a thank you for your mentorship. His expression transformed like a child receiving an unexpected Christmas gift. Are you certain? This is significant. Absolutely, I smiled. I'm more of a wine person anyway. The next morning, my phone rang. Jace's name flashed on the screen. Good morning, I answered cheerfully. Thanks again for the birthday gift. So, how was the whiskey? His voice had an odd edge I couldn't quite place. Oh, I gave it to Rowan. He loves whiskey and was absolutely thrilled. The silence that followed felt endless. You did what? His voice exploded with such intensity. I pulled the phone away from my ear. The reaction seemed wildly disproportionate. I gave it to our CEO, I repeated calmly. He was impressed by your taste. Actually thanked me personally. More silence. Then, in a voice vibrating with barely controlled emotion, that whiskey cost 3 months of my salary. The call ended abruptly. I sat frozen, phone still in hand. 3 months' salary? That couldn't be right. Jace was a mid-level analyst making decent money. No whiskey could possibly cost that much, could it? I typed the name Rowan had mentioned into my search bar. My stomach contracted as the results loaded. The Dalmore Constellation 1964. Current market value, $38,000. The room seemed to tilt sideways. $38,000? For whiskey? Who spends that kind of money on a bottle of alcohol for their boss? I tried calling Jace back. No answer. I sent a text. Can we talk? I had no idea. Hours passed with no response. When I finally spotted him in the hallway that afternoon, his face was completely devoid of expression. Jace, I'm so sorry. I had absolutely no idea what that bottle was worth. He looked through me as if I were transparent. It's fine. It's not fine. Why would you give me something so valuable? A muscle twitched in his jaw. It doesn't matter now. Please let me make this right. I said it's fine. His voice remained perfectly level, his eyes utterly cold. It was a gift. You were free to do whatever you wanted with it. As he walked away, something in his posture, the rigid set of his shoulders, the measured precision of his steps, sent a chill through me. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I didn't learn the full story until weeks later, when Anika from marketing mentioned it casually over lunch. That was quite a power move Jace tried to pull, wasn't it? I paused, fork halfway to my mouth. What power move? Anika looked surprised. The whiskey? The whole Asia-Pacific expansion strategy? Everyone's talking about it. That afternoon, I pieced together what had really happened. The whiskey wasn't just an extravagant gift. It was a carefully orchestrated strategy. Jace had spent 6 months developing an innovative approach to breaking into the Asian market, something our company had been struggling with for years. His plan had been to give me the whiskey, then ask me to arrange a meeting with Rowan where he would present his expansion strategy personally. The rare bottle would have been his foot in the door, an attention-grabbing introduction to showcase his capabilities. Instead, I had handed Rowan both the whiskey and, inadvertently, fragments of Jace's ideas that he'd mentioned during our team meetings. I didn't realize I was basically pitching his concepts as my own. The following week, Rowan invited me to golf, something that had never happened before, to discuss my interesting thoughts on the Asian markets. He was implementing several of Jace's ideas, all attributed to me. If you're still with me on this wild ride, you might want to hit like and subscribe, because what happened next changed everything. Not just for me, but for everyone at the company. The whiskey was just the beginning of a story none of us saw coming. My name is Kinsley Zhao. Until that bottle of whiskey appeared on my desk, I considered myself a good person, dedicated division manager with a team of 14, divorced 3 years, no kids. My life revolved around exceeding targets and the occasional weekend with friends. I wasn't particularly close with my team. I believed in maintaining professional boundaries, but I wasn't a monster. At least, that's what I thought. Jace Bennett joined my team after a stellar run at a smaller competitor. His resume was impressive. Graduated top of his class, rapid promotions, innovative approaches to market analysis. He was 32, 7 years younger than me, with an intensity that sometimes made others uncomfortable. He didn't socialize much with the team, but his work was consistently exceptional. What I didn't know about Jace was that the Asian expansion strategy represented everything to him. His grandmother had been born in Hong Kong before immigrating as a teenager. The connections he'd cultivated weren't just business relationships. They were built through distant family members, painstakingly nurtured over years. The whiskey itself had a story. His grandfather had briefly worked at the distillery in his youth, before it became famous. Through that tenuous connection, Jace had located one of the 12 existing bottles. He'd liquidated investment accounts to purchase it, all for a chance to present his strategy personally to Rowan. And I had casually handed it over like it was a $20 bottle from the grocery store. After the whiskey incident, subtle changes began happening around the office. Nothing I could definitively point to, but the atmosphere around me shifted. People stopped talking when I approached. Conversations included references to meetings I couldn't remember attending. During our department update, Jace presented analytics showing an unexpected uptick in our digital engagement metrics. "This is excellent," I said. "Why wasn't I briefed on this initiative?" Jace's expression conveyed polite confusion. "We discussed this 3 weeks ago, Kinsley. You approved the strategy shift during our Tuesday meeting." Several team members nodded in agreement. "I don't recall." "I have the notes here," he said, sliding a document across the table. There it was, detailed minutes showing my apparent enthusiasm for the very approach I was now questioning. Had I forgotten? Was I losing my grip? I prided myself on my memory and attention to detail. Later that week, I received an email from our biggest client requesting that Jace be their primary contact moving forward. When I asked why, their response was cryptic. "We feel our concerns are being addressed more consistently with him." My assistant began scheduling impossible back-to-back meetings across town. Critical emails arrived with key information missing. My presentation slides contained subtle errors I only discovered while delivering them. The Q3 projections show a 14% increase, I confidently told the board, only to hear murmurs as they studied their handouts. "Kinsley, the slide says 4%, Rowan noted, frowning. I looked at the screen. Somehow, the number had changed. I was certain it had read 14% during my preparation. "There must be a technical glitch," I stammered. After the meeting, I checked the file. 14%, clear as day. I began to question my own perception. When I tried to discuss these issues with my supervisor, Elena, she seemed concerned. About me. "Kinsley, are you doing okay? This isn't like you. The scattered approach, the inconsistencies. I think someone is deliberately sabotaging me," I said, immediately regretting how paranoid it sounded. Elena's expression confirmed my fear. "That's a serious accusation. Do you have evidence?" I didn't. Nothing concrete. Just a growing sense of unease and the cold look in Jace's eyes whenever our gazes met. 3 months after the whiskey incident, Rowan announced a special celebration for our company's 30th anniversary. Each division head would present the CEO with a commemorative gift during an all-hands gathering. I spent weeks planning the perfect present, something that would reset perceptions and remind everyone of my value to the company. I commissioned a custom crystal deal tombstone commemorating our 3 largest acquisitions, with hidden details that represented our company's journey. The day before the celebration, Jace approached my desk. It was the first time he'd initiated a conversation in months. "I've been reflecting on our misunderstanding," he said, his voice softer than I'd heard it since that fateful phone call. "I'd like to make amends." Relief washed through me. "I appreciate that, Jace. I truly never meant to be. I know tomorrow's important to you," he continued. "I have a connection who might be able to enhance your gift for Rowan. No cost to you. Consider it my olive branch." Could it really be this simple? Part of me remained suspicious, but the larger part desperately wanted to resolve the tension. "That's very generous. What did you have in mind?" "Let me take care of everything," he said with a smile that, for the first time in months, seemed genuine. "Trust me, it'll make tomorrow memorable." I hesitated, then nodded. "All right, thank you." That night, I slept better than I had in weeks. Perhaps the strange war between us was finally ending. The celebration arrived with appropriate fanfare. Hundreds of employees gathered in the atrium as division heads presented their gifts. When my turn came, I approached Rowan with confidence. "This represents not just our company's achievements, but your visionary leadership," I said, handing him the package. Rowan unwrapped it carefully. His expression shifted from polite interest to shocked recognition as he lifted out not my crystal commemoration, but an identical whiskey bottle to the one Jace had given me months ago. "Incredible," he breathed. "How did you find another one?" The distillery told me only 12 existed worldwide. The room went silent. I stood frozen, unable to comprehend what was happening. Where was my gift? How was this possible? Before I could form a response, Jace stepped forward from the crowd. Sir, may I? He asked, gently taking the bottle and holding it to the light. I believe this may be a counterfeit. The authentic bottles have a small imperfection in the glass near the seal. This one doesn't. The room grew painfully quiet. Rowan's expression hardened as he looked from the bottle to me. Is this true? He asked. I stammered, unable to respond coherently. My carefully planned moment was disintegrating before hundreds of witnesses. Jace continued calmly, explaining authentication markers with the precision of an expert. The genuine Dalmore constellation has a particular weight to the bottle itself, hand-blown glass with slight variations. The label has microprinting that's nearly impossible to replicate. His fingers traced the bottle's surface. I only know because my grandfather worked at the distillery briefly in his youth. Rowan's gaze had transformed from delight to suspicion. You're saying Kinsley knowingly gave me a fake? I would never presume to know Kinsley's intentions, Jace replied with perfect diplomacy. Perhaps she was misled by whoever sold it to her. The implication hung in the air. I'd either been duped like a fool or was deliberately trying to deceive our CEO. I didn't. This isn't. My voice sounded alien to my own ears. There's been some mistake. Rowan handed the bottle back to me. We'll discuss this privately, he said, his voice tight. He turned to the crowd with a forced smile. Let's continue with the presentations. As people's attention shifted to the next division head, Jace passed by me, leaning close enough that only I could hear. That bottle is actually genuine. But now, whenever anyone sees it in Rowan's cabinet, they'll always wonder, just like you'll always wonder which of your mistakes are really yours. The celebration continued around me while I stood immobilized, the bottle clutched in my hands like a ticking bomb. My mind raced through possibilities. Where was my original gift? How had Jace orchestrated this? Would anyone believe me if I tried to explain? The following weeks became an exercise in professional purgatory. No formal accusations were made, those would have required evidence. But whispers followed me through hallways. My authority eroded through 1,000 microscopic cuts. Rowan's trust in me visibly diminished. My invitations to executive strategy sessions became less frequent. Projects I had once spearheaded were subtly redirected to other managers, never officially reassigned, just gradually shifted through a series of temporary arrangements. Throughout it all, Jace performed flawlessly. His work remained exceptional, his manner respectful. To anyone observing, he appeared to be my most loyal team member, constantly covering gaps in my increasingly disorganized management. Kinsley seems distracted lately, I overheard Elena telling another director. Thank goodness for Jace keeping that department running. I considered confronting him directly, demanding to know his endgame. But what would that accomplish? Without evidence, I'd only appear more unstable. Instead, I focused on rebuilding, documenting everything meticulously, double-checking every communication, arriving earlier and staying later than anyone else. For 3 weeks, my strategy seemed to be working. The whispers quieted. My performance reviews, while not stellar, stabilized. I began to think perhaps the worst was behind me. Then came the Nakamura proposal. Our Japanese client had been considering a substantial expansion of their contract, potentially our biggest deal of the year. I'd been cultivating this relationship for months, carefully laying groundwork. The presentation was scheduled for Monday morning, and I spent the entire weekend perfecting every detail. When I arrived at the office on Monday, Jace was already there, unusually early. Morning, Kinsley. Coffee? He held out a cup from my favorite shop. I hesitated before accepting it. Thank you. Big day with Nakamura. Anything I can help with? I've got it covered, I replied, surprised by the offer. He nodded, smiling. Of course. Just wanted you to know the team's behind you 100%. The gesture was so unexpected, so normal, that for a moment I wondered if I'd imagined the entire whiskey saga. Perhaps it had been simple misunderstandings blown out of proportion by my own insecurities. The Nakamura executives arrived precisely on schedule. I greeted them confidently, escorting them to our largest conference room where my presentation awaited. As they settled in, I connected my laptop to the projector. My desktop appeared on screen, but my presentation file was nowhere to be found. Just a moment, I said, navigating through folders with increasing panic. The file I had finalized last night, 64 meticulously crafted slides, had vanished. Sweat beaded along my hairline as I searched frantically. The executives shifted uncomfortably. I could feel their confidence in me evaporating with each passing second. Just as I was about to apologize for the delay, Jace appeared in the doorway. "Everything all right?" he asked, the picture of concerned professionalism. "I can't locate the presentation file," I admitted quietly. "That's strange." He frowned. "Would you like me to check if it's on the shared drive? Perhaps you saved it there as backup." I nodded gratefully. Within minutes, he returned with a USB drive. "Found a version from last week," he explained. "It might not have your latest updates, but it's better than nothing." Relief flooded through me. "Thank you," I whispered as he plugged in the drive. The presentation opened flawlessly. All my latest data, all my carefully crafted transitions. It was my complete file, not an older version. How had it disappeared from my computer only to reappear on the shared drive? I pushed the question aside, focusing on delivering a compelling pitch. The Nakamura executives seemed impressed. Questions followed, deep and engaged. I began to relax, feeling the presentation turning in my favor. Then came the budget slide. "As you can see," I said confidently, "our proposal fits comfortably within your stated parameters, with a 10% contingency built in for unexpected developments." The lead executive leaned forward, frowning. "These figures differ significantly from what we discussed last week." I blinked in confusion. "Last week?" "Yes. During our preliminary call, your colleague Jace provided a breakdown that was considerably more favorable." My heart seemed to stop. I wasn't aware of any preliminary call. The room grew uncomfortably silent. The executive pulled out his phone, checking something. "Wednesday, 2:30 p.m. We spoke for 40 minutes. He indicated he was calling on your behalf since you were in another meeting." I had no recollection of authorizing such a call. Worse, the figures they were expecting were completely unrealistic. No way we could deliver at those rates without taking a loss. "There appears to be some internal miscommunication," I said carefully. "Perhaps we should take a short break while I consult with my team." In the hallway, Jace was waiting, his expression concerned. "How's it going?" "You had a call with Nakamura last week?" I kept my voice level with effort. "Yes, the preliminary discussion you asked me to handle. I sent you the summary afterward." He pulled out his phone, showing me an email I had no memory of receiving. "They were particularly interested in the alternative pricing structure we discussed in our strategy session." "We never discussed an alternative pricing structure." His expression shifted to careful confusion. "Kinsley, we spent nearly 2 hours on it last Thursday. The entire team was there." He glanced at his watch. "Should I gather everyone to help clarify this for Nakamura?" The trap was perfectly laid. If I insisted no such meeting occurred, I would appear completely disconnected from my own department. If I accused Jace of lying, I'd seem paranoid and unprofessional in front of our most important potential client. "That won't be necessary," I said finally. "Let's just focus on salvaging this presentation." By afternoon, the damage was done. Nakamura signed a modified agreement, significantly less profitable than my original proposal, with a specific request that Jace serve as their primary contact moving forward. The pattern continued with maddening subtlety. Clients began specifically requesting Jace. My access to certain systems inexplicably failed at critical moments. Calendar invitations disappeared. Important emails arrived in my spam folder instead of my inbox. Each isolated incident could be explained away as a technical glitch or simple miscommunication. Together, they formed a devastating pattern that was impossible to prove but increasingly impossible to ignore. At night, I lay awake trying to understand Jace's endgame. If he wanted my position, he could have had it by now. Rowan clearly valued his input more than mine. Yet he seemed content to remain in my shadow, gradually hollowing out my authority while maintaining the appearance of loyal support. 6 months after the whiskey incident, opportunity arrived in the form of our annual leadership retreat, 3 days at a mountain resort, focused on strategic planning for the coming year. I was surprised to receive an invitation. My star had fallen so far that inclusion didn't seem guaranteed. When I mentioned this to Elena during our weekly check-in, she seemed puzzled. Why wouldn't you be included? Your division's numbers have actually improved this quarter. This was news to me. Have they? Significantly. Particularly in the APAC region, up 18%. Rowan specifically mentioned how impressed he was with the turnaround. Hope flickered to life. Perhaps my careful documentation and diligent work were finally paying off. Maybe I could still salvage my reputation and position. The retreat began with the usual team-building exercises and strategy sessions. I approached each activity with renewed determination, contributing thoughtfully and reconnecting with colleagues I'd withdrawn from during my months of suspicion and self-doubt. On the second evening, Rowan invited several of us to his suite for informal drinks and conversation. To my surprise, he greeted me warmly. Kinsley, just the person I wanted to speak with. Your Asia-Pacific numbers are remarkable. I'd like to hear more about how you've achieved such growth despite the regulatory challenges. For a moment, I hesitated. The Asia strategy had been Jace's originally, the very one I'd inadvertently presented as my own after the whiskey gift. But in the months since, I'd actually developed my own approach, building on some of his ideas but adding substantive innovations. It's been a multifaceted approach, I began, outlining the framework I'd implemented. Rowan listened intently, asking insightful questions. Others joined our conversation, and for the first time in months, I felt my confidence returning. This was why I had succeeded in the first place. My strategic thinking, my ability to navigate complex market dynamics. Later that evening, as people began drifting back to their rooms, Rowan pulled me aside. I owe you an apology, he said quietly. I allowed rumors and perceptions to color my judgment of your capabilities. That was unfair. Thank you for saying that, I replied, emotion tightening my throat. It's been a challenging period. I'd like you to present your Asia-Pacific strategy to the full executive team next month. If it's as solid as it sounds, we may want to implement elements across other regions. I walked back to my room feeling lighter than I had in months. Perhaps the nightmare was finally ending. Perhaps I could rebuild after all. My room keycard wouldn't work. 3 attempts, and the light remained stubbornly red. Exhausted but still buoyed by the evening's success, I made my way to the front desk. I'm so sorry, Ms. Zhao, the night manager said, after trying to reprogram my card without success. It appears there's an issue with the electronic lock on your room. Our maintenance staff has gone for the night, but we can move you to another room immediately. 20 minutes later, I entered my new room, larger than the original, with a stunning mountain view. A complimentary bottle of wine sat on the desk with a note apologizing for the inconvenience. I changed into pajamas and was about to call it a night when my phone chimed with a text message from Rowan. Almost forgot to mention, bring your distribution timeline to breakfast. Want to review before the 9 a.m. session. I opened my laptop to locate the file he wanted, then froze. Every document, every spreadsheet, every presentation I had prepared for the retreat was gone. My entire work folder had been wiped clean. Panic surged through me. I had backups on my external drive, but that was in my original room, the room I could no longer access. I called the front desk. I need to get into my previous room. I left something important. I'm afraid that's not possible tonight, Ms. Zhao. The electronic lock is completely malfunctioning. That's why we had to relocate you. Maintenance will address it first thing in the morning. Morning would be too late. I needed those files for breakfast with Rowan. I considered my options. I could email Jace, ask him to send me copies of the most critical documents. The thought made me nauseous, but I was desperate. As I reached for my phone, it chimed again. A text from an unknown number. Looking for your files? Check your email. Seconds later, an email arrived from an anonymous address. The subject line read, "What you lost and what you took." Attached was a compressed folder containing all my missing documents, along with something else. A video file titled watchme.mp4. My hands trembling slightly, I clicked play. The video began playing, showing the conference room at our headquarters. The timestamp in the corner showed a date from 6 months ago, the day after I'd given Jace's whiskey to Rowan. I recognized myself sitting at the head of the table, leading what appeared to be a routine team meeting. but I had no memory of this specific meeting. The camera angle suggested it was filmed from someone's laptop, partially obscured as if recording secretly. The audio was crystal clear. On screen, I was speaking, "Exceptional work Jace has done on the Asia-Pacific strategy. I've already shared the preliminary concepts with Rowan, who is very impressed." My blood ran cold. I had never said those words. The video continued, showing me apparently taking credit for Jace's work, explaining my strategy for Asian market penetration, details that matched exactly what Jace had been developing before the whiskey incident. The meeting participants nodded along, occasionally glancing at Jace, whose face remained carefully neutral. "This can't be real," I whispered to the empty room. But it looked real, sounded real. My mannerisms, my voice inflections, all perfect, yet the entire meeting was fabricated. A sophisticated deepfake that would convince anyone who viewed it that I had deliberately stolen Jace's work and presented it as my own. The video continued for nearly 40 minutes, documenting a meeting that never happened. Throughout, the manufactured version of me repeatedly emphasized how I had developed these strategies independently, occasionally acknowledging Jace's minor contributions with condescending praise. When it finally ended, another video automatically began playing. This one showed me in Rowan's office, apparently the same day. The angle suggested a hidden camera. "The whiskey was just to get your attention," my digital doppelganger said smoothly. "The real gift is this strategy. Jace doesn't have the experience to present it properly, so I decided to handle it myself." Rowan nodded appreciatively in the video. "Smart move. The boy has potential but lacks your strategic vision." "Exactly," the fake me replied. "He's useful for data analysis, but this level of market strategy requires a more seasoned perspective." I closed the laptop with shaking hands. The implications were staggering. If these videos were shared, with HR, with the executive team, with clients, my career wouldn't just be damaged. It would be obliterated. The phone chimed again. Another text from the unknown number. "Enjoying the show? There's more where that came from. Much more." I tried calling the number. No answer. I considered calling Rowan, trying to explain, but what would I say? That someone had created elaborate, completely convincing videos showing me doing exactly what I'd been suspected of all along? Sleep was impossible. I spent the night reviewing every document in the recovered folder, ensuring they were intact for the morning meeting. Among them, I discovered dozens of emails I'd supposedly sent but had no recollection of writing, all containing subtle undermining of other executives, inappropriate comments about clients, or veiled criticisms of Rowan's leadership. By dawn, the picture was horrifyingly clear. For 6 months, Jace had been constructing an elaborate alternative reality, one where I was not just incompetent but actively malicious. He had created a digital trail of evidence showing me stealing his work, sabotaging colleagues, and manipulating clients. And no one would question it because the foundation, my casual handover of his whiskey to Rowan, established a pattern of behavior that made everything else believable. At breakfast, I handed Rowan the distribution timeline he'd requested, my mind racing with possible ways to address what I'd discovered. Before I could formulate an approach, Jace appeared, greeting us both with his now familiar professional warmth. "Morning, Kinsley. Sleep well in your new room?" His smile revealed nothing, but his eyes held a gleam of satisfaction. "Fine, thank you," I replied mechanically. "I heard about the lock malfunction," Rowan said. "Inconvenient timing." Jace nodded sympathetically. "Technology can be so unreliable sometimes. Speaking of which, did you get a chance to review those projections I sent over, Rowan? The ones showing the potential impact of implementing Kinsley's Asia strategy across other regions?" My strategy. He was calling it my strategy now, establishing public attribution that would make the fake videos even more damning when they eventually surfaced. The day proceeded with excruciating normalcy. Strategy sessions, breakout discussions, presentations from other divisions. Throughout, Jace performed flawlessly as my supportive lieutenant, deferring to me publicly while subtly positioning himself as the real authority. During the afternoon break, I escaped to a secluded terrace overlooking the mountains. I needed space to think, to plan. The anonymous texts had stopped, but the threat remained. When would the videos be released? To whom? And what could I possibly do to counter such convincing evidence? Beautiful view, a voice said behind me. Anika from marketing approached, coffee in hand. Mind if I join you? I gestured to the empty chair beside me, grateful for the distraction. You seem distracted today, she observed after a moment. Everything okay? I considered deflecting but found myself too exhausted to maintain the pretense. Not really. I've discovered something troubling about Jace, she asked quietly. My head snapped up. What do you mean? Annika sipped her coffee, considering her words carefully. There have been patterns, things that didn't quite add up. She set her cup down. I worked with him at his previous company. Did you know that? I hadn't known. Nothing in his personnel file indicated they'd worked together. He was brilliant there too, she continued. Innovative, hardworking. His division manager took credit for one of his projects, a minor one. Nothing like your situation with the whiskey. But afterward, she trailed off, shaking her head. What happened? The manager's career imploded. Slowly at first. Small mistakes, miscommunications, then bigger problems. Eventually, he was let go for incompetence. Jace was promoted into his position. My mouth went dry. You think it wasn't coincidental? She shrugged. I had suspicions, but no proof. And honestly, the manager wasn't well liked. Few people questioned his downfall. She leaned closer. But the similarities to what's been happening with you, it's uncanny. Why are you telling me this now? Because last night, I received an anonymous email containing videos of you saying things I'm fairly certain you never said. Her eyes met mine steadily. The sender suggested I should consider who I align myself with very carefully. My heart raced. You received the videos too? She nodded. I suspect others did as well. The question is, why now? Why at the retreat? The answer hit me with sudden clarity. The retreat wasn't just a corporate planning session. It was an evaluation period for upcoming organizational changes. Decisions about promotions, restructuring, leadership roles for the coming year would all be influenced by interactions and impressions formed here. He's positioning for something big, I murmured. The videos discredit me just as Rowan is reconsidering my value. Anika nodded. That would be my guess. But Kinsley? She hesitated. These videos are incredibly convincing. Without knowing you personally, I might have believed them myself. What can I possibly do against something like this? She considered the question seriously. You need to change the narrative. Right now, everything fits the story he's created. You took credit for his work after carelessly giving away his whiskey. Your subsequent failures and his successes reinforce that narrative. She leaned forward. What if you could establish a counter-narrative that makes people question his entire framework? A glimmer of an idea began forming in my mind. I need access to our company servers. For what? To understand exactly how deep this goes. The remainder of the retreat passed in a blur of strategic planning, not the company's, but my own. I participated in sessions, contributed to discussions, all while processing what I'd discovered and formulating my response. More anonymous emails circulated subtly among attendees, never sent to everyone at once, but strategically distributed to create maximum impact with minimum traceability. By the final dinner, I could feel the shift in how people interacted with me. Subtle distancing, conversations that stopped when I approached. Jace, meanwhile, received increasing attention from Rowan and other executives. His insights were solicited, his contributions praised. He maintained his supportive demeanor toward me publicly, but his eyes held the satisfaction of someone watching their master plan unfold perfectly. The final morning, Rowan announced a significant reorganization effective immediately upon our return to headquarters. Several promotions and lateral moves designed to optimize our organizational structure for the challenges ahead. I held my breath, waiting for my demotion or reassignment. Instead, Rowan announced, Kinsley will be taking on expanded responsibilities, overseeing both her current division and our new special projects unit. Murmurs of surprise rippled through the room. No one was more shocked than I was, except perhaps Jace, whose careful composure slipped momentarily before he recovered. Additionally, Rowan continued, Jace will be promoted to Senior Strategy Director, reporting directly to me. There it was, the culmination of his 6-month campaign. Not my position, but something potentially better. Direct access to the CEO, bypassing the traditional hierarchy entirely. As people congratulated both of us, Jace approached with his practiced smile. "Congratulations, Kinsley. Well deserved." "Thank you," I replied. "And congratulations on your new role. Working directly with Rowan is a significant opportunity. I'm looking forward to it." His eyes studied me, perhaps searching for signs of defeat or resentment. I smiled pleasantly. "We should have a drink to celebrate when we get back. I believe I owe you a bottle of whiskey." For the first time since this began, I saw genuine surprise flash across his face. That would be appropriate. 3 days later, back at headquarters, I sent Jace a calendar invitation. Celebration drinks, my office, 7 p.m. He accepted within minutes. That evening, he arrived precisely on time. My office lights were dimmed, a single lamp illuminating the 2 whiskey glasses on my desk and the familiar bottle between them, an exact duplicate of the one he had given me 6 months earlier. "You found another Dalmor constellation," he observed, impressed despite himself. "I have my resources," I replied, gesturing for him to sit. "Cost me 3 months' salary, but some things are worth the investment." His lips quirked in appreciation of the callback to our fateful phone conversation. "Indeed they are." I poured 2 fingers in each glass, sliding one toward him. "To new beginnings." He raised his glass slightly. "To getting what we deserve." We both drank. The whiskey burned pleasantly going down, warming my chest. "You know," I said conversationally, "I've been thinking about our journey these past 6 months. It's been educational." "How so?" He seemed relaxed now, perhaps believing this meeting signaled my acceptance of defeat. "I've learned how easily reality can be manipulated, how thin the line is between perception and truth." I sipped again. "For instance, most people don't realize how comprehensive our internal security systems are." His expression remained neutral, but his fingers tightened almost imperceptibly around his glass. "Our IT infrastructure captures everything, Jace. Every login, every file access, every email, even those that appear to be deleted. Every use of company equipment, on-site or remote." I leaned forward slightly. "Including every instance when someone uses advanced video manipulation software on our servers." The first hint of uncertainty crossed his face. "That's thorough." "It is. But what's really interesting is how these systems correlate data. For example, they can identify when someone accesses my calendar through a backdoor protocol, then creates appointment conflicts. Or when someone uses my login credentials from a different device while I'm simultaneously logged in elsewhere." I opened my desk drawer, removing a flash drive. "This contains 6 months of forensic evidence documenting every digital manipulation you've orchestrated, every fake email, every altered document, every fabricated video, all traced directly back to your devices and access credentials." His expression hardened. "That's absurd. You're bluffing." "Am I?" I connected the drive to my laptop, turning the screen so he could see. "This is footage from the security camera in the main server room, showing you installing something on the primary file server at 2:17 a.m., 3 weeks after the whiskey incident. And this," I clicked to another file, "is the log showing the installation of sophisticated deepfake software on a partitioned section of the company server, accessed exclusively through your credentials." His face remained impassive, but sweat had begun to bead at his temples. "Even if any of this were true, which it isn't, no one would believe you over me at this point. You've seen the videos. Your credibility is shot." "That's where you're wrong," I said quietly. "You see, I haven't been working alone." On cue, my office door opened. Rowan entered, followed by Elena and 2 people Jace didn't recognize, our head of IT security and the company's chief legal counsel. "Hello, Jace," Rowan said, his voice chillingly formal. "We need to discuss your creative use of company resources." Jace's eyes darted between us, calculating rapidly. "Whatever Kinsley's told you isn't relevant," Rowan interrupted. "The evidence speaks for itself. We've been monitoring your activities for weeks. The only question remaining is whether we handle this internally or involve the authorities." Jace's carefully constructed facade cracked completely. You can't possibly have. He stopped abruptly, reassessing. I was just trying to protect the company from incompetent leadership. Everything I did was for the benefit of include. Save it, Elena said sharply. We've seen enough to know exactly what your motivations were. As the legal team explained the consequences he was facing, immediate termination, potential criminal charges for computer fraud, contractual violations, I watched the man who had nearly destroyed my career confront the collapse of his elaborate scheme. When they finally escorted him out, Rowan remained behind. I owe you an apology, he said. I should have trusted my initial judgment of your character. I shook my head. His manipulation was incredibly sophisticated. If Annika hadn't recognized the pattern from his previous company, if IT hadn't been able to trace his digital footprints, I gestured to the whiskey bottle still sitting on my desk. All of this because I didn't understand the value of what I was carelessly giving away. Rowan picked up the bottle, examining it thoughtfully. Is this really another Dalmore constellation? I smiled. No. It's a $30 replica with a carefully reproduced label. Some things aren't worth 3 months' salary after all. He laughed, setting it down. The special projects position is real, by the way. I'd like you to consider taking it exclusively rather than dividing your attention. After seeing how you handled this situation, I believe your talents might be better utilized in a more strategic role. After he left, I sat alone in my office, contemplating the replica whiskey bottle that had helped me reclaim my narrative. The irony wasn't lost on me. Jace's entire revenge scheme had been built around creating convincing fakes, and in the end, he was undone by his inability to distinguish a fake from the genuine article. I poured the remaining whiskey down the sink, then placed the empty bottle in my credenza as a reminder. Some gifts come with hidden costs, and some revenge plots consume their creators. If you've made it to the end of this wild ride, I hope it's taught you what it taught me, that perception can be weaponized, but truth eventually finds its way to the surface. Like, comment, and subscribe if you want more stories about workplace revenge gone wrong. Or sometimes, when justice demands it, gone exactly right. You're fired. Consider it my gift to you. The text message burned into my retinas as I stood in my wedding dress, bouquet still in hand. Moments ago, I'd said, I do, to the love of my life. Now, in the church vestibule, surrounded by floating flower arrangements and the distant chatter of excited guests, I stared at my phone in disbelief. Tate Lawson, my boss's son, the man who'd made my work life miserable for 3 months, had chosen my wedding day, to terminate my employment. I showed the message to Karen, my brand new husband. His reaction surprised me. Instead of outrage, a knowing smile spread across his face. He took my trembling hands, kissed my knuckles, and whispered, "Check your messages later. Today belongs to us." How could he be so calm? I'd just lost my job as lead project manager at the most prestigious architecture firm in the city. The position I'd worked myself to exhaustion for. The career I'd built over 2 dedicated years. But something in Karen's eyes told me to trust him. So I silenced my phone, tucked it into my maid of honor's purse, and walked with my husband through the grand doors of the church, into a shower of rose petals and cheers. 3 hours later, during our first dance, Nima, my maid of honor, rushed over with wide eyes. "Waverly, your phone won't stop buzzing. You have 108 missed calls." I checked the screen. Calls from the office, from coworkers, and 17 from a number I recognized instantly. Gregory Lawson, the company owner himself, Tate's father. And that's when I realized this wasn't just a firing, this was the beginning of something much bigger than I could have imagined. Before I continue, if you're enjoying this story, please take a second to like and subscribe. Many listeners hear these stories but never engage, and that means you might miss future uploads when the algorithm skips you. Trust me, you'll want to hear how this ends. Now, back to my wedding day nightmare. My name is Waverly Abrams, and until that text message, I was the beating heart of Crescent Design Studio. I'm meticulous by nature, the kind of person who color codes her grocery lists and can spot a measurement error in architectural plans from across the room. My colleagues called me the database, because I remembered every client preference, every project detail, every deadline without needing to check notes. My parents were both teachers who valued precision and hard work. When Dad had his stroke during my first year of college, I nearly dropped out to help Mom with medical bills. Instead, I doubled my course load while working nights at a printing shop. I graduated with honors in architectural project management, with minor specializations in computer systems and urban planning. That's how I landed at Crescent 2 years ago. Gregory Lawson, the founder, recognized my unusual combination of architectural knowledge and systems thinking. He hired me to modernize their project management approach. I designed a proprietary system from scratch, one that tracked every blueprint version, client request, budget allocation, and permit application. The system worked brilliantly. Project completion times dropped by 30%. Client satisfaction scores rose. Gregory called me the best investment this company ever made. Then came Tate. At 32, Tate Lawson had bounced between 3 different divisions of his father's company, never finding his footing. He had his father's square jaw and confident stance, but none of his business acumen or people skills. 3 months ago, Gregory announced his semi-retirement and promoted Tate to department director, my direct supervisor. The atmosphere changed instantly. Where Gregory sought my input, Tate excluded me from meetings. Where Gregory praised my innovations publicly, Tate took credit for my ideas. When I scheduled training sessions to document my system for others, Tate canceled them as unnecessary expenses. I met Karen during this time, when I was submitting plans for Crescent's biggest project ever, a downtown revitalization worth millions. He worked at the city's permit office, the calm, thoughtful man behind the counter who actually took time to review submissions thoroughly instead of just rubber stamping them. We connected over blueprint discussions, then coffee breaks, then dinner dates. Karen became my sanctuary from the increasingly hostile work environment. What I didn't know then was that he was noticing concerning patterns in the submissions from Crescent, specifically the ones Tate had handled personally. 2 months into our relationship, Karen proposed. We planned a small wedding on short notice, partly because we were both practical people who didn't need extravagance, and partly because I sensed my position at Crescent was becoming precarious. Tate had been making comments about restructuring and streamlining. I never imagined he'd actually fire me on my wedding day. As the reception continued around me, I excused myself to the bridal suite and listened to Gregory's voicemail. "Waverly, this is Gregory. Call me immediately. Tate had no authority to terminate you. There's been a terrible mistake. We need you. The downtown project submission deadline is Monday, and no one can access your system." 6 more messages followed, each more desperate than the last. In the final one, Gregory's voice had lost its usual confidence. "Waverly, please. The Westside development team is threatening to walk. No one can find the updated renderings. The password Tate thought would work doesn't. We're at a standstill." I sat on the edge of a velvet settee, my wedding dress pooling around me, and felt something unexpected. Power. For 2 years, I'd built a system so intuitive for me that I navigated it without thought, but so complex that no one else could use it without proper training that Tate had repeatedly prevented. I was the only person alive who fully understood every function, every shortcut, every failsafe I'd built in. And now, on what should have been the worst professional day of my life, I held every card. Karen found me there, staring at my phone. He sat beside me, careful not to wrinkle my dress. "I should tell you something," he said quietly. "The plans Tate has been submitting to my department, he's been altering them after the engineering team signs off, removing safety features, substituting cheaper materials, things that would never pass proper inspection." My blood ran cold. "That's not just unethical, it's dangerous." Karen nodded. "I've been documenting everything. I was going to report it next week, but now." I understood then why he'd smiled at the firing text. This wasn't a setback. It was an opportunity, one that removed me from legal liability while simultaneously leaving the company helpless without me. "What should we do?" I asked. Karen smiled. "Nothing. Not today. Today, we dance. Tomorrow, we fly to Belize for our honeymoon. and when we return, he kissed my forehead. We'll reshape the entire landscape. We returned to the reception, and I danced like a woman without a care in the world. By midnight, I had 212 missed calls. Throughout our honeymoon week, the calls continued. I sent them all to voicemail. Gregory's messages evolved from urgent to desperate to practically begging. On our third day in Belize, while Karen and I were sipping fresh coconut water on the beach, Gregory offered to triple my salary if I'd come back. I deleted the message without responding. 2 days later, he offered partial ownership in the firm. Again, I didn't respond. Karen watched me decline these incredible offers without comment. He understood something fundamental about me. This had never been about money. It was about respect. You know, he said as we watched the sunset on our final evening in Belize, there's a vacancy in the consulting team for the city planning department. They need someone who understands architectural submissions from both sides, someone who could create guidelines for proper protocols. I turned to him, intrigued. Are you suggesting what I think you're suggesting? I'm suggesting you start your own consulting firm, with the city as your first client. They'd pay for your expertise in creating systems that catch exactly the kind of corner-cutting Tate was doing. The idea took root instantly. By the time our plane landed back home, I'd drafted a business plan on my tablet. 3 days later, I registered Precision Protocol Consulting. My phone rang within minutes of the business registration going public. Gregory Lawson. For the first time in 2 weeks, I answered. Waverly, thank God, we're in crisis. The downtown project is stalled. Clients are walking. Please, name your price. I'm sorry to hear that, Gregory, I said calmly, but I'm no longer available for employment. I've started my own consulting firm. We'll hire your firm then. Whatever you're charging, we'll pay it. I let the silence stretch between us. My first client is the city planning department, Gregory. I'm designing new verification protocols for building submissions. The sharp intake of breath told me he understood the implications. If I was working with the city to create better verification systems, I would inevitably discover Tate's dangerous alterations, if Karen hadn't already reported them. Waverly, please. Tate made a terrible mistake. He was jealous of your relationship with me, of your competence. Let me fix this. Some things can't be fixed, Gregory. Some bridges, once burned, stay ash. I ended the call and turned to Karen, who had been listening nearby. Is it wrong that felt so good? He shook his head. It's not wrong to stand up for yourself, or for public safety. The following week, I began my contract with the city. With my insider knowledge of how firms like Crescent operated, I quickly identified vulnerabilities in the current verification system. I created new protocols that would catch unauthorized changes to approved plans, especially structural modifications made without engineering review. As part of the process, the city conducted an audit of recent submissions. Predictably, they found numerous violations in Crescent's downtown project plans, specifically in submissions handled by Tate. Load-bearing walls thinned, foundation specifications altered, safety features removed to cut costs. The investigation was swift and damning. The downtown project was permanently halted and reassigned to a competing firm. Tate wasn't just fired, he was blacklisted throughout the industry. His professional license was suspended pending review. Crescent Design Studio lost millions. Their reputation, built over 30 years, crumbled in 30 days. Through industry contacts, I heard that Gregory had suffered a minor heart attack from the stress. Despite everything, that news brought me no pleasure. Gregory had been a good mentor before his blind spot for his son clouded his judgment. My consulting business thrived. Within 6 months, I had contracts with 3 municipal governments and was hiring staff to keep up with demand. Karen received a promotion at the permit office for his ethical stand. We bought our first home, a fixer-upper with good bones and incredible potential, just like our life together. Then, 1 year to the day after my wedding, a thick cream envelope arrived at my office. Inside was a handwritten letter from Gregory Lawson. Dear Waverly, it began. Some debts can never be fully repaid, but acknowledgement is the beginning of atonement. I've spent this year rebuilding what my son and my own negligence destroyed. Tate has completed a professional ethics program and works now in a junior position under strict supervision. He understands the gravity of his actions. Crescent has new leadership and new protocols. We've rehauled every system and every submission process. We are a different company now. I'm writing to ask if you would consider meeting with me. Not to return, I understand that bridge is indeed ash, but to consult on our new systems, to ensure we never fail the public trust again. Whether you accept or decline, please know my respect for you has only grown. You were right to stand your ground, right to protect the public, right to demand better. With sincere regret and admiration, Gregory Lawson. I showed the letter to Karen that evening. What do you think? Should I meet with him? Karen considered it carefully. What would be your purpose in going? Closure? Vindication? Professional curiosity? I pondered his question. All of those, I suppose. And maybe to see if genuine change is possible. Then I think you have your answer. I scheduled the meeting for the following week. When my assistant told me Gregory had requested the meeting take place at Crescent's offices rather than mine, I almost canceled. Returning to that building felt like stepping backward, but curiosity won out. When I arrived, the receptionist, a new face I didn't recognize, greeted me with unusual deference. Miss Abrams, Mr. Lawson is waiting in the main conference room. As I walked through the hallways, I noticed significant changes. New faces, new energy, new systems visible on screens. As I passed workstations, they'd truly started over. The conference room door was open. I stepped in to find not just Gregory but Tate as well, sitting stiffly beside his father. Gregory stood to greet me, but Tate remained seated, eyes fixed on the table. Waverly, thank you for coming. Gregory's handshake was firm, but his face looked aged beyond the single year that had passed. Stress had carved new lines around his eyes. I took a seat across from them. Your letter was unexpected. As was the education of this past year, Gregory replied, but necessary. He glanced at his son. Tate has something to say to you. Tate finally looked up. The arrogant gleam I remembered had vanished from his eyes, replaced by something unfamiliar, humility, or at least its closest approximation. I owe you an apology, he said, voice barely above a whisper. What I did was unprofessional, vindictive, and potentially dangerous to the public. There's no excuse for my behavior. His words sounded rehearsed, but the shame coloring his face appeared genuine. Still, an apology couldn't erase the past. Apology noted, I replied, neither accepting nor rejecting it outright. Gregory cleared his throat. There's more. He slid a folder across the table. This company has been rebuilt from its foundation. New safety protocols, new review processes, new leadership structure. Tate is no longer in management. He's relearning the business properly this time, from the ground up. I opened the folder. Inside was a detailed overview of their new systems, impressively thorough, I had to admit, along with a consultant contract offering a substantial fee for my review and recommendations. We're not asking you to come back, Gregory clarified, just to evaluate our new approach, to ensure we've truly changed. As I scanned the documents, Tate stood suddenly. There's something else. His voice cracked slightly. He left the room, returning moments later with a smaller envelope, which he placed before me with shaking hands. Inside was a check, for exactly the amount of my entire wedding, down to the penny for the last flower arrangement. How did you know this figure? I asked, suspicious. Your wedding planner is my cousin's best friend, Gregory admitted. I asked for the total. I wanted it to be precise. Tate spoke again, this time more steadily. Consider it our gift to you, the one I claimed to be giving when I had no right. A flash of anger surged through me. Did they really think money could fix this? That they could buy their way back to ethical standing? Before I could respond, Tate placed a small USB drive beside the check. This also belongs to you. It's the entire project management system you created, with all the passwords and access points. We've managed to recreate basic functionality, but it's never worked properly without you. It's yours to take or delete. I stared at the tiny drive, feeling the weight of 2 years' work condensed into something I could hold between two fingers. The system I'd built with such care, that had been used as a weapon against me when Tate prevented others from learning it. In that moment, looking at these two men, one broken by his own ethical failings, the other humbled by the consequences of his arrogance, I realized something profound about revenge. Sometimes it arrives without you having to deliver it yourself. Sometimes the greatest vengeance is simply surviving, thriving, and watching others reckon with the mess they've made. I closed the folder and stood up. I'll review your proposals and get back to you within the week. My fee will be triple your initial offer, paid in advance. My team will need complete access and full transparency. Gregory nodded immediately. Agreed. And one more condition. I looked directly at Tate. You personally will complete every single training module I assign, no matter how basic or time-consuming. You'll learn every aspect of proper project management, ethical submission practices, and regulatory compliance. You'll become the company's foremost expert on doing things the right way. Color drained from Tate's face, but he nodded. Yes, I understand. Then we might have something to discuss. I gathered my belongings and walked to the door, pausing with my hand on the handle. Oh, and Gregory? The check is unnecessary. Seeing your son learn the value of integrity will be gift enough. I left them sitting there, the check untouched on the table, and walked out of Crescent Design Studio with my head high. But this isn't where my story ends. It's where the real transformation began. That evening, as Karen and I discussed the meeting over dinner, my phone pinged with a news alert. Crescent's competitor, the firm that had taken over the downtown revitalization project, was under investigation for bribery. They had allegedly paid off officials to fast-track approvals despite serious design flaws. Did you know about this? I asked Karen. He shook his head. The investigation just opened today. It's being handled by the state, not the city. I stared at my phone, mind racing. If Crescent's competitor fell, the downtown project would be in limbo again. Millions in development funds would sit idle, workers would lose jobs, and the community revitalization everyone had been promising for years would stall once more. Maybe this is why Gregory reached out now, Karen suggested. He must have known this was coming. He's positioning Crescent to retake the project. The realization hit me like a thunderbolt. I wasn't being offered a consulting job out of respect or regret. I was being courted because Gregory needed my systems and expertise to seize an opportunity when his competitor failed. I felt used all over again. What are you going to do? Karen asked, seeing the storm gathering in my expression. I pushed my plate away, appetite gone. I'm going to sleep on it. This requires careful thought. But sleep eluded me that night. I tossed and turned, replaying the meeting in my mind. Was Tate's contrition genuine, or just another performance? Was Gregory truly committed to ethical reform, or simply desperate to salvage his legacy? And most importantly, what did I want my role to be in whatever happened next? By morning, I had my answer. I called Gregory at 7 a.m. I've reconsidered your offer, I told him. I'm not interested in consulting for Crescent. The disappointment in his silence was palpable. I understand, he finally said. However, I continued, I am interested in something else. A partnership. A partnership? His voice lifted with surprise. My company oversees all project management and regulatory compliance. Crescent handles design and construction. We operate as separate entities but present as partners to clients. This way, I maintain my independence while ensuring ethical standards are met. That's highly unusual, Gregory said slowly. So is firing someone on their wedding day? I countered. I'm not interested in returning to a company where I could be undermined again, but I am interested in seeing that downtown project completed properly. The community deserves that. There was a long pause. What about Tate? Where does he fit in this arrangement? Tate works for you, not me, but any project he touches goes through triple verification by my team. No exceptions. Another pause. I'll need to discuss this with my board. You have 24 hours, I replied. After that, I'll be presenting my own proposal to the city for the downtown project. I ended the call feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time, complete ownership of my future. No longer was I reacting to what had been done to me. I was creating something new, on my terms. 23 hours later, Gregory called back. The board has approved your proposal, with one addition. They want a 3-year minimum commitment. 2 years, with an option to extend based on performance metrics that we both agree to in advance. I countered. Done. And just like that, Precision Protocol Consulting had its biggest client yet. When the competitor firm was officially removed from the downtown project 2 weeks later, our newly formed partnership was ready with updated plans, enhanced safety features, and a comprehensive management system that combined the best of my original design with new security protocols. The city awarded us the contract, partly due to our innovative partnership structure that promised both creative design and rigorous compliance verification. The press called it a new model for architectural accountability. Tate was assigned as Junior Project Coordinator, a position 5 levels below his previous role. Every morning, he received a detailed training module from my team. Every evening, he was tested on the material. If he failed, he repeated the module the next day. To my surprise, he never complained. He completed each assignment meticulously, asked thoughtful questions, and gradually began to show genuine understanding of why protocols existed. 3 months into our partnership, I arrived early at the construction site for an inspection and found Tate already there, methodically checking concrete pour specifications against the approved plans. You don't have to personally verify this, I told him. That's what the site engineers are for. He straightened up, clipboard in hand. I know, but I need to understand every aspect from the ground up. That's the only way I'll truly learn. I studied him, searching for signs of the arrogant young man who'd fired me by text. Instead, I saw someone different, someone chastened by failure and genuinely striving to rebuild himself. Why did you do it? I asked suddenly. Why fire me on my wedding day specifically? Tate flinched but held my gaze. Because I knew you were right. About everything. The training programs, the safety concerns, the need for better documentation. And I couldn't stand it. Couldn't stand that you'd built something so essential that even my father respected you more than me. So you tried to hurt me at my most vulnerable moment. He nodded, shame evident in his posture. I thought I'd feel powerful. Instead, I watched everything collapse. The system nobody could navigate. The projects nobody could track. My father's face when he realized what I'd done. He swallowed hard. I destroyed in one moment what might have been the best mentorship I could have had. His words hung in the morning air between us, unexpectedly genuine. You can't undo the past, I said finally. But you're right about one thing. I would have been a good mentor. I still could be, if you earn it. Hope flickered across his face. How? By becoming the kind of professional who puts safety and integrity above ego. By learning every aspect of this business properly. By admitting when you don't know something instead of hiding it. I can do that, he said with quiet determination. I will do that. I nodded. Then let's start with these poor specifications. Show me what you've found. For the next hour, I walked him through proper verification procedures, explaining rationales rather than just rules. He absorbed everything with genuine interest, asking intelligent questions that revealed a mind capable of much more than I'd given him credit for. As we finished and others began arriving for the day's work, Tate hesitated, then asked, Do you think you'll ever truly forgive me? I considered the question carefully. Forgiveness isn't something you're owed. It's something that might develop over time, through consistent actions rather than apologies. Show me who you're becoming, not who you regret being. He nodded, accepting the challenge without protest. Over the following months, the downtown project progressed ahead of schedule. Our partnership model received national attention, with other municipalities expressing interest in similar arrangements. My consulting firm expanded to 15 employees, while Crescent gradually rebuilt its reputation under the new structure. Gregory, true to his word, kept Tate on a strict learning path. The young man who had once sabotaged training sessions now organized them himself, ensuring every team member understood both the how and why of proper procedures. 6 months into the project, I received an unexpected visit at my office from Raina, my former assistant at Crescent. She'd stayed when I left, and now work directly with Gregory. He wants to promote Tate, she told me without preamble, to assistant project manager. I raised an eyebrow. And he sent you to test my reaction? She smiled. He sent me to get your honest assessment. Tate has completed all the training modules with perfect scores. His site reports are exemplary. The team actually respects him now. And what do you think? I asked. Reina had always been perceptive about people. I think he's genuinely changed. And I think having responsibility might solidify that change. I leaned back in my chair, considering. Tell Gregory I'll support the promotion with one condition. Tate needs to handle the upcoming community presentation. Alone. Let's see how he does when representing the project to the people it actually affects. The community presentation was scheduled for the following week, a critical milestone where we would update neighborhood residents on construction progress, timeline, and how their input had shaped design modifications. It was a high-pressure situation, with potentially hostile questions from residents who'd seen previous promises broken. I attended incognito, sitting in the back row of the community center. Tate arrived early, setting up displays and greeting people personally as they entered. When he stepped to the podium, I noticed something surprising. He was nervous. The old Tate would have covered insecurity with arrogance. This version acknowledged it directly. Good evening, everyone. I'm Tate Lawson, Assistant Project Coordinator. Some of you may remember when this project stalled last year. That failure was partly due to my mistakes. Shortcuts. I tried to take that compromised safety and violated your trust. A murmur ran through the crowd. This level of candor was unexpected. I'm here today not just to update you on our progress, but to assure you that every aspect of this project now undergoes triple verification. Our partnership with Precision Protocol Consulting means nothing reaches construction without rigorous safety and compliance review. He proceeded to walk through the updated plans, highlighting areas where community feedback had directly influenced design changes. When tough questions came, he answered honestly, including several times when he said, "I don't know, but I'll find out and get back to you personally." By the end, the initial skepticism had transformed into cautious optimism. Residents approached him afterward with follow-up questions, which he addressed with patience and transparency. I slipped out before he could spot me, but I'd seen enough. The next day, I called Gregory. "I heard Tate did well yesterday," he said immediately. "He did, I was there." "And your verdict?" I paused, knowing my next words would significantly impact Tate's future. "I support the promotion. He's earned it." Gregory's relief was audible. "Thank you, Waverly. Your endorsement means everything. Just remember, trust is rebuilt in small moments of integrity, repeated consistently over time. One good presentation doesn't erase the past." "I understand. We all do." After hanging up, I stood at my office window, looking out at the downtown skyline where our project was gradually taking shape. Cranes swung against the blue sky, workers moved purposefully across the site, and the community had begun to believe again in the promise of revitalization. This wasn't the revenge I'd initially imagined when I returned from my honeymoon to 212 missed calls. It was something more complex, more nuanced, a reconstruction rather than a destruction. I hadn't ruined Tate or Gregory. I'd helped create a framework where they could become better versions of themselves, while securing my own position of strength. And in doing so, I'd built something far more valuable than a system only I could understand. I'd built a model of accountability that might actually last beyond any single project or person. That evening, as Karen and I walked past the construction site on our way to dinner, we paused to watch the sunset glint off the partially completed structures. "Are you happy with how things turned out?" he asked, squeezing my hand. I considered the question carefully. "I'm satisfied, not because they suffered, but because actual change happened. The company is safer. The buildings are sounder. The community will benefit. And Tate? Tate is." I searched for the right word. "Tate is becoming someone his position deserves. Whether that redemption continues is up to him." Karen nodded thoughtfully. "You know, when I showed you that text message on our wedding day, I never imagined this outcome. I thought you'd want scorched earth." "Maybe I would have, if you hadn't shown me another way." I leaned against his shoulder. You taught me that sometimes the best revenge isn't about destruction. Sometimes it's about reconstruction, but on your terms, not theirs. He kissed the top of my head. Speaking of reconstruction, the house renovations are finally done. Should we have Gregory and Tate over for dinner to celebrate? I laughed at the suggestion. Let's not push it. Professional respect is one thing. Friendship is quite another. Fair enough, he conceded with a smile. One step at a time. One step at a time. That had become my mantra through this entire journey. From the moment I received that text on my wedding day to the partnership that rose from the ashes of my firing, each step had led me not just to survival, but to genuine triumph. The downtown project would be completed under budget and ahead of schedule. My consulting firm would continue to grow, and I would forever be known as the woman who turned a wedding day firing into an industry-changing business model. As Karen and I continued our evening walk, my phone buzzed with a text. It was from Tate. Thank you for your support on the promotion. I won't let you down. I showed it to Karen, who raised an eyebrow. Are you going to respond? I thought for a moment, then typed, make sure you don't. Some gifts can't be returned. As I hit send, I realized the text had arrived exactly 1 year to the day after his gift to me on my wedding day. The symmetry wasn't lost on me, nor, I suspected, on him. Some might say I should have crushed Tate completely when I had the chance, that I should have taken Gregory's company apart piece by piece instead of helping rebuild it, that my revenge wasn't vengeful enough. But those people would be missing the point. True power isn't about destruction. It's about having the ability to destroy and choosing a different path. It's about reshaping reality according to your vision, not just reacting to someone else's cruelty. In the end, I didn't just get even. I got ahead, and I did it not by stooping to Tate's level, but by rising so far above it that he would spend years climbing to reach where I now stood. If you've stayed with me through this story, you might be wondering if you could show the same restraint in my position. Could you turn betrayal into opportunity? Could you transform revenge into reformation? It's not an easy path, but sometimes the most satisfying victories aren't about what you destroy, but what you build from the ashes of what tried to destroy you. If this story resonated with you, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever turned a professional betrayal into an unexpected triumph? I'd love to hear how you transformed your own setbacks into stepping stones. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so you won't miss my next story about navigating the complicated landscape of career, relationships, and the sweet satisfaction of success on your own terms. I stood frozen at the podium, certificate in hand, as Petra sauntered into the conference room. Every eye tracked her movement. The boss's daughter, who'd spent more time posting office party photos than learning our product line. My moment of triumph evaporated as she approached, designer heels clicking against the floor like a countdown. "Excuse me, everyone," she announced, her voice cutting through the congratulatory murmurs. "There's been a slight adjustment to today's announcement." The room fell silent. 3 years of 2 a.m. product launches, saved accounts, and international conference calls had led to this moment. My promotion to Senior Development Manager. Now Petra was looking at me with the detached interest of someone studying an insect. After careful consideration, she continued, not bothering to look at the note card in her hand, "We've decided the senior development position requires additional experience. Corinne will be taking the assistant coordinator role instead." She smiled thinly. "Consider it a reality check." My certificate suddenly felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. The room blurred as blood rushed to my face. Garrison, her father and our CEO, wasn't even present for this ambush. Thea, my closest colleague, reached for my arm, but I stepped away. I wouldn't break. Not here. The champagne and cake will still be served in the break room. Petra added, checking her watch. "I have calls with our European partners in 15 minutes, so unfortunately I'll miss the celebration." Our European partners. My European partners. The ones I'd spent 6 months cultivating relationships with for our biggest international launch yet. As people awkwardly filed out, their congratulations transformed to whispered sympathies. I felt something shift inside me. The floor beneath my sensible shoes seemed to tilt as a clarity I'd never experienced before washed over me. I didn't know it yet, but that moment of humiliation would be the catalyst for something Petra never anticipated. Because while she had her father's name, I had something far more valuable, and she had just made the mistake of taking everything I had nothing left to lose. If you're enjoying this story of workplace betrayal and what might happen next, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more real-life dramas that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Comment below if you've ever had someone try to take credit for your hard work. I read every comment and would love to hear your experiences. My name is Corinne Ashcroft. Before that day, colleagues described me as methodical, dedicated, and perhaps too accommodating. I grew up in a small coastal town where my father ran the local hardware store, teaching me the value of knowing your inventory better than your competition. My mother, a high school mathematics teacher, instilled in me the importance of double-checking every calculation. Neither prepared me for corporate politics. I joined Garrison's company 3 years ago after completing my master's in international business development. The company was struggling to expand beyond domestic markets, and my thesis on penetrating reluctant international economies caught their attention. I wasn't the obvious choice. I lacked the pedigree of other candidates, but my research was solid, and I was hungry to prove myself. For my first project, I was assigned to analyze why our products weren't selling in Australia. After 3 weeks of research, I discovered our shipping partner was holding inventory in non-climate controlled warehouses, causing product degradation before items even reached shelves. My solution saved the company $3.4 million in my first quarter. I continued to quietly solve problems nobody else could see. When our Asian market expansion stalled, I identified cultural customizations that revitalized sales. When tariffs threatened our Canadian distribution, I found a legal workaround that preserved our margins. Through it all, I remained in my mid-level position while watching less qualified people climb past me. People like Derek, who played golf with Garrison. People like Weston, who attended the same university as the board chairman. People like Petra, who spent her first year observing departments before landing a director title. I told myself merit would eventually win. I was naive. The morning before my promotion turned demotion, I had received an email from our largest potential European partner. "Your analysis of our market is the most comprehensive we've seen," their CEO wrote. "We look forward to tomorrow's presentation and finalizing our partnership." That partnership would be worth $42 million in first-year revenue alone. I had spent months identifying a legislative loophole that would give us significant tax advantages if we moved quickly, before pending regulations closed it. The information wasn't public knowledge, but my research with regulatory insiders had uncovered it. This was my masterpiece. And now, apparently, it was Petra's. After the demotion announcement, I walked directly to HR. Everett, the human resources director, welcomed me with practiced neutrality. His office smelled of coffee and printer toner. "Corinne, what can I do for you today?" he asked, despite surely knowing why I was there. "I'd like to understand the rationale behind my position change," I said, keeping my voice steady, particularly since it contradicts what Garrison told me yesterday. Everett shifted in his seat. "Position adjustments happen for various reasons." "Everett," I interrupted, "we've known each other for 3 years. Let's not pretend this is normal procedure." He sighed, shoulders dropping. "Look, I understand your frustration, but her father owns the company. What do you expect us to do?" The fluorescent light above flickered, casting momentary shadows across his apologetic expression. "So merit means nothing here?" I asked. "Merit means something," he replied carefully, "but family means more." I left his office with my answer. In the elevator down to my floor, my phone buzzed with a message from Thea. "Petra just emailed everyone. She's taking over your European presentation tomorrow. Says she's handling it personally now." The elevator doors opened, but I couldn't move. The European presentation contained my research about the regulatory loophole, the key to our competitive advantage. If presented correctly, it would cement our position in 5 countries. If handled poorly, my phone buzzed again. "Thea, she's in your files right now, copying everything." Of course she was. Why steal half a victory when you could take it all? I returned to my desk, soon to be relocated to some distant corner, and found Petra sitting in my chair, scrolling through my computer. She didn't even look up. "I need your presentation notes for tomorrow," she said. "They're all in the shared folder," I replied. "Everything's there." This wasn't entirely true. My latest research, the critical updates about the regulatory timeline, was saved in my personal notes. I hadn't transferred them to the shared drive yet, planning to incorporate them during my final presentation review. "Perfect," Petra said, standing up. "I'll take it from here. You should start moving your things to the assistant coordinator desk." She finally looked at me, her expression almost curious. "You know, if you had networked more, this might not have happened. All work and no play makes for replaceable employees." As she walked away, my desk phone rang. It was Veronica, our contact at the European Regulatory Commission. "Corinne, I just confirmed that information you asked about. The vote is definitely happening next week, not next month like everyone thinks. If your company wants to utilize the existing framework, you'll need to file within 10 days. 10 days. Not the 6 months everyone in the industry believed we had. Thank you, Veronica. This is incredibly valuable. I'm only telling you because you've done your homework better than anyone else approaching our markets. Will I see you at tomorrow's presentation?" I paused, my hand tightening around the receiver. "I'll be there, but there's been a change in presenters." After hanging up, I sat motionless, considering my options. The correct thing would be to immediately update the shared folder with this critical information, to ensure the company had every advantage. But as I watched Petra showing off my presentation to admirers across the office, another path crystallized in my mind. I could just do nothing. The thought both terrified and exhilarated me. I had never deliberately withheld information before, but I wasn't being asked to present. I was being demoted. My work was being stolen. What did I owe them? That evening, I stayed late, packing my desk items while everyone else left. The office grew quiet except for the hum of air conditioning. In the corner conference room, I could see Petra still practicing my presentation. She was stumbling over the technical details, but her confidence never wavered. She truly believed that confidence alone could substitute for competence. As I watched her, my phone rang. It was Garrison himself. "Corinne," he said without preamble, "I just heard about today's announcement. I want you to know I was in board meetings all day." "Are you saying you didn't approve the change?" I asked, heart suddenly racing. A long pause followed. "I'm saying Petra has strong instincts about organizational needs. The board feels she's ready for more responsibility. And my work, my projects, will be appropriately managed," he finished smoothly. "This isn't a reflection on your performance. Sometimes we need to make room for emerging talent." Emerging talent. His daughter was 31, 4 years older than me. "I understand," I said, though I didn't. "Excellent. I knew you would. That's why we value you. Just not enough to honor promises. Not enough to protect my career." As I hung up, Petra emerged from the conference room. Seeing me still there, she approached. "Still working? That's dedication," she said with artificial brightness. "Quick question about slide 32, the regulatory timeline. It mentions pending legislation but doesn't give specifics. Is there a supplemental document?" This was my moment. The information from Veronica changed everything about our market entry strategy. Without it, any presentation would be fundamentally flawed. I looked at Petra, really looked at her. Behind her confidence, I saw anxiety. She knew she was presenting work she didn't understand, but she also believed her name would protect her from consequences. "Everything important is in the main deck," I said. "The legislation isn't expected to impact near-term plans." The lie tasted strange on my tongue, not bitter as I might have expected, but almost sweet. "Perfect," she said, visibly relieved. "That's what I thought." She turned to leave, then stopped. "You know, you should really be grateful. Assistant coordinator is more your speed. The senior role requires someone who can see the big picture, not just crunch numbers." After she left, I sat alone in the darkening office. Tomorrow, Petra would present my work to our European partners, our executive team, and the investment committee. She would present outdated regulatory information. She would miss the urgency of our market entry timeline. She would, with absolute confidence, lead the company toward a massive strategic error, and I would watch it happen. The next morning, I arrived early and chose a seat in the back of the main conference room. Executives began filing in at 8:45. Our European partners arrived at 8:55, led by Henrik, their silver-haired CEO. The investment committee, H1, five serious individuals with the power to approve or deny the $42 million expansion, took their seats at 9 precisely. At 9:10, Petra entered, wearing an outfit that probably cost more than my monthly salary. She distributed handouts, my handouts, created 3 weeks ago. "Good morning, everyone," she began, her voice steady. "I'm Petra Garrison, Strategic Initiatives Director, and I'm excited to present our European market entry strategy." For the next hour, I watched her deliver my work as her own. She handled the basic material well enough: the market size analysis, the competitive landscape, our product differentiation. The audience seemed engaged, nodding at appropriate moments. Then came the questions. "These projections assume current regulatory conditions," said Elise from the investment committee. "What contingencies do we have if regulations change?" Petra smiled confidently. "Our analysis indicates regulatory stability in this sector. The European Parliament isn't considering relevant changes for at least 6 months, giving us ample implementation time." Henrik frowned, exchanging glances with his legal counsel. "Are you certain? We've heard rumors of accelerated timelines." "Just rumors," Petra assured him. "Our sources are quite reliable." My stomach tightened. Veronica wasn't a rumor. She was the assistant director of the Regulatory Commission. The questions grew more technical. With each one, Petra's answers became vaguer, her confident smile more forced. When asked about tariff implications for specific product components, she gave an answer so incorrect I had to stifle a gasp. Then Henrik asked the question I'd been dreading and anticipating. "What's your position on next week's parliamentary vote regarding cross-border digital commerce regulations?" Petra blinked rapidly. "Next week? Our intelligence suggests that vote is scheduled for next quarter." "It was moved up," Henrik said flatly. "It's on the official parliamentary calendar. The outcome will fundamentally reshape market entry requirements." Petra faltered for the first time. "We believe it won't significantly impact our projections." The room went silent. Henrik leaned back, no longer taking notes. The investment committee members exchanged concerned glances. Garrison, sitting at the head of the table, frowned deeply. "Perhaps," Henrik said carefully, "we should reconvene after your team has had time to assess the updated regulatory timeline." The meeting ended with uncomfortable handshakes and non-committal pleasantries. As everyone filed out, Garrison pulled Petra aside, his expression thunderous. Neither looked in my direction. I returned to my new desk in the corner, smaller, facing a wall, a physical manifestation of my demotion. By lunchtime, whispers spread that the European partners were reconsidering. By mid-afternoon, the investment committee had postponed their decision. At the 30, Garrison burst from his office, face flushed, phone clutched in his hand. Petra followed, her earlier confidence replaced by panic. My phone began to buzz. First Thea, then Everett from HR, then the head of legal. By the time I checked my notifications 4 hours later, I had 96 missed calls and messages. The company was in crisis mode. The European partners had not only delayed but were reconsidering whether we were competent enough to work with. The investment committee was questioning the entire expansion strategy, and everyone was looking for answers about how we could have missed something so fundamental. No one had yet realized that I might have those answers, but they would, soon, and when they did, everything would change. That night, I couldn't sleep. My phone continued buzzing with messages I refused to answer. Around midnight, I finally silenced it and stared at my ceiling, thoughts racing. The company was in full meltdown, and I was the only one who knew exactly why. Morning arrived with a company-wide email announcing an emergency board meeting at 9 a.m. My name wasn't on the attendee list. No surprise there. Assistant coordinators didn't attend board meetings. I dressed carefully that morning, choosing a simple charcoal dress I'd worn on my first day at the company. As I applied my lipstick, my phone rang. "Thea." "Corinne, where are you? Everyone's looking for you." Garrison is having a complete breakdown, and Petra locked herself in the bathroom an hour ago. I'll be in shortly, I replied calmly. They've called an emergency board meeting. Henrik and the European team are threatening to walk completely. Did you know about the vote next week? I paused, lipstick midair. Yes, I did. Silence stretched between us. Corinne, Thea's voice dropped to a whisper. Did you deliberately not tell Petra? I set down my lipstick. I'm on my way. We'll talk when I get there. The office was chaos when I arrived. People hurried between conference rooms, expressions tense. Everett from HR spotted me immediately. Thank God, he said, rushing over. The board wants to see you. Now. He led me to the executive floor, a place I'd visited rarely, and never with positive outcomes. Outside the boardroom, Garrison paced, while two board members spoke in hushed tones. Petra was nowhere to be seen. When Garrison noticed me, he stopped pacing. His face, normally confident and commanding, looked haggard. Corinne, he said, my name sounding strange in his mouth. We need to talk about the European presentation. Before I could respond, the boardroom door opened. Avery, the board chairman, gestured me inside. Ms. Ashcroft, please join us. The long boardroom table was filled with grave faces. Henrik and two members of his team sat on one side. The investment committee occupied the other. At the head sat Avery, his silver hair perfectly arranged despite the crisis atmosphere. Ms. Ashcroft, Avery began as I took the single empty chair. We understand you were originally assigned to the European market expansion project. That's correct, I replied, and you were removed from the project yesterday, immediately following your position adjustment. I nodded. Yet you attended yesterday's presentation. Why? All eyes turned to me. I could feel Garrison's gaze burning into my back from where he stood by the door. I wanted to support the company's interests, I said carefully. I've invested significant time in this project and care about its success. Henrik leaned forward. Ms. Ashcroft, were you aware of next week's parliamentary vote on cross-border commerce regulations? The room held its breath. This was the moment that would define everything that followed. Yes, I answered simply. I received confirmation of the accelerated timeline the day before yesterday. The room erupted with voices. Avery raised his hand for silence. And why wasn't this information included in yesterday's presentation? He asked. I met his gaze directly. I was removed from the project before I could update the shared files. My notes about the regulatory changes were in my personal research documents. Personal research? Garrison interrupted from behind me. All company work should be on the shared drive. I turned slightly to face him. The verification came through shortly before my demotion. I hadn't yet transferred my notes. I paused, and afterward, no one asked me for any updates. The silence that followed was deafening. Do you have this information with you now? Henrik asked. I reached into my bag and removed a folder. I do, along with a complete analysis of how we can still enter the market before the new regulations, if we move very quickly. For the next 2 hours, I walked the room through everything I knew, the specific regulations changing, the timeline for implementation, the narrow window we had to establish market presence under the existing framework, the exact steps required to meet the deadline. Henrik's team took extensive notes. The investment committee members exchanged meaningful glances. Avery watched me with growing interest. When I finished, Avery spoke first. It seems we have a significant opportunity, if we can move fast enough. We can, I said confidently, but decisions would need to be made immediately. And who would lead this accelerated timeline? Henrik asked. Before Avery could respond, Garrison stepped forward. Naturally, Petra would. Ms. Ashcroft, Avery interrupted. Would you be capable of leading this initiative? The question hung in the air. Through the glass walls, I could see Petra had finally emerged, watching the meeting from a distance, her expression unreadable. Yes, I said. I would. Avery nodded. The board needs to discuss next steps privately. Ms. Ashcroft, please wait outside. In the hallway, Garrison cornered me immediately. What game are you playing? He hissed, keeping his voice low enough that others couldn't hear. No game, I replied calmly. Just sharing what I know. You deliberately withheld critical information. I was demoted and removed from the project, I said. Nobody asked me if I had updates. His face reddened. You should have volunteered it. Like Petra volunteered to take my promotion? I asked quietly. Before he could respond, Petra approached. Her designer outfit from yesterday replaced by something more subdued. Her eyes were rimmed with red. They're going to blame me for everything, she said to her father, ignoring my presence. The board is furious. No one's blaming anyone, Garrison said, though his tone lacked conviction. Petra finally acknowledged me with a glare. You set me up. I did no such thing, I replied. I simply didn't correct your mistakes. You knew the presentation was incomplete. So did you, I countered. But you presented it as definitive, anyway. Before she could respond, the boardroom door opened. Avery emerged, followed by Henrik and the others. We've reached several decisions, Avery announced to our small group in the hallway. First, we're proceeding with the European expansion on the accelerated timeline Ms. Ashcroft outlined. Henrik nodded in agreement, with the understanding that we must file all necessary documentation before next week's vote. Second, Avery continued, Ms. Ashcroft will lead the project as Senior Development Manager, effective immediately. Garrison started to object, but Avery held up his hand. This is not negotiable, Garrison. The board has decided. And what about my daughter? Garrison demanded. Avery's expression hardened slightly. Petra will transition to our facilities management team. Her people skills will be valuable there. Facilities management, overseeing office space and maintenance. The corporate equivalent of being sent to Siberia, Petra gasped. That's janitorial work. It's administrative, Avery corrected coldly. And perhaps educational. My father won't allow this, she said, her voice rising. He's the CEO, who serves at the pleasure of the board, Avery reminded her. A board currently questioning his judgment in personnel matters. The threat hung in the air. Garrison's face paled. Now, Avery continued, Ms. Ashcroft has work to do if we're going to meet these deadlines. I suggest we all support her efforts. Within an hour, I was moved back to my original desk and given access to all necessary resources. Thea was assigned as my project deputy. By lunchtime, we had a preliminary timeline drafted for the accelerated market entry. When I finally checked my personal email that evening, I found a message from Veronica at the European Regulatory Commission. Heard through the grapevine that your presentation had some excitement yesterday. If you're still leading the project, I'd be happy to provide any clarification needed before the vote. I smiled as I typed my response. Thank you, Veronica. I am indeed leading the project now, and I would appreciate your insights. The next week passed in a blur of activity. 14-hour days, constant calls with Henrik's team, meticulous preparation of regulatory filings. Through it all, Petra remained conspicuously absent, while Garrison kept his distance, speaking to me only when absolutely necessary. On Thursday, 2 days before the parliamentary vote, Henrik visited our offices to review final documentation. I'm impressed, he said as we concluded our meeting. Your team has accomplished in days what most companies couldn't do in months. Thank you, I replied. We're motivated to get this right. He studied me thoughtfully. You know, when Petra gave that presentation, I nearly walked away completely. Her confidence, despite such obvious knowledge gaps, was alarming. She had limited time with the material, I offered diplomatically. Henrik smiled slightly. You're being gracious, unnecessary, but appreciated. He gathered his papers. By the way, there's an opening in our executive team for someone who understands both markets. Once this partnership is established, I'd be interested in discussing possibilities with you. The offer caught me off guard. I'm committed to seeing this project succeed. Of course, just something to consider for the future. After he left, I sat at my desk, turning his words over in my mind. A week ago, I'd been demoted to a position with no future. Now I was fielding executive offers from international partners, all because I had chosen not to speak up. The thought was still with me that evening as I worked late, finalizing documents. Most of the office had emptied when I heard footsteps approaching. Petra stood before my desk, looking nothing like the confident woman who had demoted me. Her designer clothes had been replaced by business casual, her makeup subdued. Can we talk? She asked, her voice lacking its usual edge. I gestured to the chair across from me. She sat, hands folded tightly in her lap. "I've been assigned to the Belgrade office," she said without preamble. "Facilities management for our Eastern European archive facility." Belgrade, the company's most remote location, housing decades of paper records nobody ever accessed. "I see," I said, unsure how to respond. "My father can't protect me anymore. The board has him on probation too." She looked up, meeting my eyes directly. "You won." The statement surprised me. This wasn't about winning. "Wasn't it?" she challenged. "You could have told me about the regulatory vote. You chose not to." I considered denying it, then decided on honesty. "Yes, I chose not to." "Why?" "Because you took something you didn't earn," I said simply, "and you needed to understand the consequences." She was quiet for a moment. "I've never failed at anything before." "That's the problem," I replied. "Failure is how we learn." "And what am I supposed to learn from being exiled to Belgrade?" I leaned forward slightly. "That name's open doors, but knowledge keeps them open." She nodded slowly, then stood to leave. At the door, she paused. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry about the demotion. It wasn't personal. It felt personal." "It wasn't," she insisted. "It was just convenient. I needed a senior role, and yours was available." As she walked away, I realized something important. To Petra, people like me were interchangeable, our careers mere stepping stones for her advancement. We weren't rivals in her mind. We were props. That understanding changed everything. The next morning, I received an email from Avery requesting a private meeting that afternoon. When I arrived at his office, I was surprised to find Henrik there as well. "Corinne," Avery began, "we want to discuss your future with the company." My stomach tightened. My future? Henrik has made a compelling case for creating a new position, International Partnerships Director. We've agreed this role should be yours, with appropriate compensation and authority. Henrik smiled. "As I mentioned yesterday, your understanding of both markets is exceptional." "This is unexpected," I managed. "Is it?" Avery asked. "You single-handedly saved our most important partnership and prevented a potentially disastrous market entry mistake." "What about Garrison?" I asked carefully. "As CEO, wouldn't he need to approve this?" Avery and Henrik exchanged glances. "There have been additional developments," Avery said. "Garrison has decided to take an extended sabbatical, effective immediately. The board will be announcing an interim CEO later today." The news stunned me. "I see. Do you accept the position?" Henrik asked. "Yes," I said. "Of course." After they outlined the details, I returned to my desk in a daze. Thea rushed over immediately. "Is it true? About Garrison?" I nodded. "How did you hear already?" "The board memo just went out company-wide. Rumor is he's not coming back." She lowered her voice. "They say the European crisis was just the final straw. Apparently, the board has been concerned about his management decisions for months, especially around his daughter." As word spread throughout the office, I received a steady stream of congratulatory messages about my new role. By evening, my promotion was official. My name added to the executive leadership page on the company website. 1 week after Petra had demoted me, I had an office twice the size of hers, a team of 12 reporting to me, and direct access to the board of directors. I had won, but strangely, victory felt hollow. That night, as I packed up to leave, I found a small box on my desk with a note from Thea. "For your new office, you earned this." Inside was a simple nameplate, Corinne Ashcroft, International Partnerships Director. I ran my fingers over the engraved letters, thinking about everything that had happened. I hadn't plotted elaborate revenge. I hadn't spread rumors or manufactured evidence. I had simply stepped aside and let Petra fail on her own merits. And in doing so, I had revealed something far more powerful than any scheme could have accomplished: the truth about her capabilities. The ultimate revenge wasn't taking her down. It was rising above while she fell under the weight of her own incompetence. 2 days later, we received confirmation that our European market entry had been approved before the regulatory changes. The partnership with Henrik's company was formalized. The $42 million expansion was proceeding. As I stood at the window of my new office, watching the sunset paint the city skyline. My phone buzzed with a text from an international number I didn't recognize. It's freezing in Belgrade. The archive facility is as exciting as it sounds. Congratulations on your promotion. I underestimated you. Won't happen again. P. I didn't reply. Some lessons are best learned in silence. 6 months later, our European expansion was exceeding all projections. Garrison's sabbatical had become permanent retirement. Petra remained in Belgrade, though rumors suggested she was looking for positions at other companies. And me? I was thriving in my new role, respected by the board and my team alike. The fear that had driven me to work twice as hard as everyone else had transformed into confidence that allowed me to work twice as smart. When Henrik visited for our quarterly review, he commented on the change. "You seem different, Corinne," more assured. "I learned something important," I told him. "True power isn't in titles or family connections. It's in knowing your value and being willing to stand in it, even when others try to diminish you." He smiled. "And in knowing when to speak up and when to remain silent. Especially that," I agreed. People often think revenge requires elaborate schemes or public humiliation, but I discovered its purest form, creating success so undeniable that those who wronged you must acknowledge it, even from their exile in Belgrade. The most devastating response to someone who tries to erase you isn't fighting back. It's becoming impossible to ignore. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe for more real workplace dramas that will keep you coming back for more. Have you ever been underestimated and then proven someone wrong? Share your experience in the comments below. I read every single one and would love to hear how you handled it.